Mr. Siddesh Gautam is a multidiscipline mixed media artist, designer, writer, poet, dreamer, storyteller, treasure hunter, soul searcher, and an Ambedkarite. His work is currently focused on visual documentation of anti-caste movement, global programming, and gender equality. Um, Mr. Gautam's work has been published in organizations such as BBC, The Guardian, and The Hindu. He has also worked with and given lectures and talks at various institutions like Stanford, University of Washington, University of Vienna, and International Institute of Social Studies at Hague. Please help me inviting Mr. Siddesh Gautam. Please feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thanks, Praneeth. Thanks
Yeah.
for the amazing introduction. Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya to everybody. Uh, it's my privilege to be here and to be talking to the people of my community and on a very interesting, a very special month, a month when two of our stalwarts, such as Baba Sahib Ambedkar and Mahatma Phule, were born, and we commemorate I think everybody from our community, our elders, in the disguise of Baba Sahib and Mahatma Phule. So I'll just show you some images. I am an artist, so I create a lot of work. Uh, some people might know me with my moniker Bakery Prasad on Instagram. If you don't, just enjoy the art today, and I'll just keep on speaking in the background about the artwork and about my journey as an artist. Um, Let me just share the screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect, perfect. So thanks again for inviting me. And this whole presentation, art side of Ambedkarism, is also something that I've been working around, thinking about, and finding my own space in the art field, in the design field, and being connected with the community and being connected with the Ambedkarite and the Buddhist ideas of equality, liberty, and fraternity. It all started with when I was very young. So where I think the first sort of casteism that happened to me when I was in fourth standard, and so I'll give you a background that I was brought up in Uttarakhand. Most of the time, most of my schooling happened in Uttarakhand, even though it is a very beautiful state with mountains and amazing flora and fauna. It is also very casteist in nature. My parents were Ambedkarites, and they thought that it would be safer for me to study, me and my sibling to study in a Catholic school, so that we don't get to the casteism directly. But whatever school you go to in at least the cow belt or the northern belt of northern part of India, caste exists. And it all started with a birthday party that I was invited to, and there was a discussion in the party that was happening in between these students who were in fourth standard, and they were discussing this one classmate of ours whose surname was B. So that was just an alphabet B, and they were, using slurs when they were in fourth standard against that girl. And I was a part of that discussion, and I realized that, one day if they will ever come to my house, they'll see an image of Baba Sahib and Buddha, and they will know what I am or where I come from. And I'll not be able to, I'll be ostracized just like my classmate was being ostracized. So I decided that I will, sort of not make friends, not have birthday parties, not invite anybody. So if I will not have a birthday party, I will not have to invite anybody, and nobody will come to know what my caste is. And if you're not inviting anybody, you also don't go to the birthday party. So you don't go. So I was not able to make friends, but it was an interesting thing that in Uttarakhand there is an amazing flora and fauna, and with that I was able to become friends with the kind of surroundings that were there around me. So I started to journal, I started to write poetry, I started to draw. Even though in my schools I would not take art as subject, but as to express myself, to share the stories with somebody, I would do journaling. I would collect insects, I would collect dry leaves, seeds, and whatnot. So my life with myself was very colorful. The constitution inside my house, which was very Ambedkarite, is also very uh, it's very freeing in nature. It makes you very independent because my parents always uh, uh, they always supported me in new things. They always supported me if I wanted to learn piano. They supported me if I wanted to learn wanted to go for basketball camp. So my parents would let me do theater and singing and other things. So I think I was able to be raised, as a more holistic, sort of a person. They would give me, small pocket money so that I can learn how to manage money. And me and my sibling were, brought up in a very Ambedkarite nature where there is no restriction of food, where there is, freedom of thought. There is nothing that you can't say or nothing that you can't ask or question. And I think that also made us, what we are today, both me and my brother. But even though my family was very colorful, even though there was a lot of freedom inside my own family, what I was seeing outside was very depressing. So, when I was young, Uttarakhand was not a state, it was also part of Uttar Pradesh. And my chief minister was Mayawati. Even though my chief minister was Mayawati, even though I had, already had dignity in my hometown, but where my father was posted, in the places where we were aliens as well, that sort of dignity was hard to see. And it is also because it was not shared by the mainstream media. In the mainstream media, my uncles, my aunts, who and still works as shoemakers and as rickshaw assemblers and other people, they were seen in a very black and white sort of a way. Even if a kid has become an IAS officer, the photograph that will come in the a newspaper would show a very frail man. And I think they did their best to show that how broken or how scattered or how weak we are as community. So I would see, even though for me, these were my uncles and aunts, everybody in my family, from barbers to people who are tanning the leather, to people who are making the drums, people who are assembling rickshaws and other things. But I was not able to see, that sort of weakness in my own family, in my own surrounding, in my own mohalla, which was shown in these newspapers and magazines that I used to read. So our stories always had black and whiteness and always had this brokenness. And that's what made me interested in revisiting these stories and reworking on these stories and bring some, sort of color in the story. And the best link to understand art, to understand the community was, again, Baba Sahib Ambedkar to me. He became an anchor to me in, while I wanted to create whatever I wanted to create. Because I was a lonely kid and because I was journaling and I was writing and I was drawing and I was collecting, I had a fascination with tactility, with touching things, with going here and there, with breathing, with smelling different plants and different things. So this actually made me a very interesting choice to study design, and it was very easy for me to also actually get admission in the best design school of India because I was preparing myself to do that. So when I sat for the exam, even though I had no coaching or no professional help, I was able to do better. And because we come from a family which was not very we do not own lands or do not have that heritage of uh, do not have a lot of heritage or money or other things. We knew that our career choices has to be in a way that it is less risky and more stable. And so I till my 12th I studied STEM, even though art was my main focus. outside my STEM, and I did well, and I gave exams for my engineering as well. But in engineering, I cracked IIT, and I got, very bad rank in that. So it was in thousands, and it was an extended merit list. So I would have gotten to ISC Bangalore, or Triple IT Hyderabad, or somewhere like that. But when I gave my design school exams, my rank was in double digits. So even I did not know that, that my aptitude for design is better than in engineering or in STEM. And then we as a family, we took a decision that, maybe if, maybe it was because of the lack of the exposure that we were not able to understand that, maybe design also has future. So we started doing research, and we started to figure out that this is an amazing place, and there is great placements. It is, it gives you a lot of freedom to, create your own things. So as a family, we took a decision that, we will go with this, two-digit happiness that we saw. And there I got enrolled into design, and that's where I started to, sort of accumulate my thoughts, and bring them together in sort of stories through projects that I would do in my college and other things. So Baba Sahib became this anchor point. And even though in my design schools, there were, in the libraries, there was absolutely no anti-caste literature, and there was absolutely uh, no book or text or information about the literature, about the art of the marginalized communities of India. There were some books on the tribal communities, even though they were, made with the gaze, but there was no documentation of the scheduled caste people. And I realized that I was brought up in a family which was doing art and craft, all the time, because of the lack of resources. I have always seen my grandmother stitching things, remaking things, upcycling things, recycling things. There was hardly anything that was thrown out of her house. And so was my grandfather. He was a great bookbinder. He used to write books. He used to go to the local library. He used to get a book, and he used to rewrite the book, and he used to keep a book in his own library, which was a free library where anybody can come and access, because there was no Xerox or photocopy. So that's how he was making copies of the books. And he had amazing handwriting. He would make you know charpai weaves and other things, and we would be involved in making all those things. And that is how I learned to understand material, and talk to the material, and started to have fun with the sort of environment that I was having in. But even though when I had this confidence with the material, with the craft that I had confidence in my hands that I can make things. But my library did not had representation of any intellectual sort of contribution of my community. So it felt very odd at that time, and it was very difficult to do projects around the community as well. But it was again Baba Sahib became an anchor, and he started to direct me towards my own heritage, which was not there in the library books. So as here in this example, he's pointing towards Bhima Koregaon. um, and here he's reading through all the text that has been written about us in different dharma shastras, which we were not even allowed to read. This is an expression of how he has just finished writing Annihilation of Caste, and he has started to find solutions. This is before Yola conference, so this is sort of in a phase where he's experimenting with the ideas of different religions and other places, and he's asking us to know what is written about us in these texts, which we are not even allowed to speak, allowed to read. Through Baba Sahib, I was able to learn about people like Gadke Maharaj, about people like Ravidas. Guru Ravidas was always present in my family. I think my parents were Ambedkarites, but my grandparents were Ravidasya. They belonged to Ravidasya sect. And they used to have their own politics of anti-caste movement before Baba Sahib entered. Uttar Pradesh and Hindi belt due to the movement of Kanchiram, Manevar Kanchiram, where he actually started to republish scholarly work of Baba Sahib Ambedkar into small pamphlets, which were easy to read by people in Hindi, in different local languages. And that's how the writings of Baba Sahib also became very popular in the northern side of India. So, I started to try to make these people together, who might have lived in different ages, but how, they sort of uh, continue this heritage of not just anti-caste movement, but a movement of equality, liberty, and fraternity, which is not just limited to a subcontinent or a country, but which is a movement, if you see, as a global movement, where people, different marginalized groups, are seeking equality, liberty, and fraternity in their own respective demographies. Through Baba Sahib, I also get to anchor philosophers like Karl Marx and Buddha, not just through his writings that he wrote up, the essays or the book that he wrote about Buddha and or Karl Marx, but also seeing Karl Marx, Buddha, and not just them, but Lacan or anybody, as individuals. So I think, Baba Sahib writing about Marx and Buddha simultaneously also gave me this inspiration to think and to visualize, these people from different eras simultaneously, and thinking about them into in the contemporary times. Even though I think more into the philosophical and artistic lines, but I think that's what Baba Sahib has also trained us to do, that be a thinker in your own occupation, become the best sort of employee or worker in your occupation. And I think that is what I have also learned the best from Baba Sahib, that you always have to work hard and hard and hard, not just for activism or anything, but also to be the best at what you do. So as whenever we talk about Baba Sahib, we talk about his passion, but we really fail to install that sort of passion in us, in our children, in our own society. So it is important that we inculcate that sort of passion, and we think beyond what is given to us in literature or in whatever form. So I started to think beyond, and try to think about more philosophers like here Confucius, Aristotle, and Buddha, and thinking about them in the contemporary times. Uh, I started to reimagine people like Mahatma Phule and Savitri Mai, and rethinking and revisiting those places where they taught or where they worked. And I have lived in Pune for almost 2 years, and but it's a beautiful place surrounded by hills, and the amazing wind that comes in the evening is just great. And every time I used to see Savitri Mai and Jyotiba Phule, I used to see this, passport size sort of a portrait where they're just, staring straight. And I used to imagine that, there is so much happening in their life. They're hated by us community, and they're loved by a community. And they're living in between that conflict to educate children. I mean, this is the most like weird thing that I can imagine, because I am of a privilege, to be born after, Baba Sahib and Mahatma Phule, where I did not had to go through, the sort of things that they had to go through. So, there would be no time that, they would be, discussing ideas. There would be some time that where, the pallu of Savitri Mai would just go off, and her hair would start to flow in the air. So I started to, reimagine these stories, with more life, and thinking about, what is around us. And, also started to trace, my lineage, not just in the in the anti-caste movement, but also in the independence movement. Like, it is very weird that, when I was a little kid, there always used to be this distrust, in people from the marginalized communities, especially Dalits and scheduled caste and Muslim community people, especially lower caste Muslim people, that their contribution to the nation building is very less. Even though we are the people who are cleaning the nation, even though we are the people who are building this nation brick by brick, concrete by concrete, silicon by silicon, cell by cell, uh, still, we are not still, stigmatized or not considered, we are not given our own places. So it is important that we find our own places. And through these findings, through these researches, I started finding people like Jhalkari Bai, who, along with Rani Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi, as much courageous as she was, went into the battleground to fight against the British, the evil British Empire at that point of time, in that point of place. And linking to people like Ayankali, who had already started a Buddhist movement in Kerala and in southern part of Tamil Nadu, before Baba Sahib Ambedkar, made it, a very big and national, a thing, a revolution of national importance. But it was already started to happen, and how, Baba Sahib would have been reading about people like Ayankali, people of like Ayodhithas, and trying to figure out, or trying to find out solutions, for the problems that he was facing in his contemporary time. And then came this amazing time that, that we got our freedom on. I don't believe that we got our freedom on 14th of August in 1947. It was a transfer of power from a few set of powerful people to another set of powerful people. But we became actually free on 26th of January. That's how I see it. In 1950, when the constitution was implemented. And this was the first book, call it holy, call it legitimate, call it whatever. But this was the only book and the first book that gave us the right of being human beings. This was the book which was co-authored by us, we the people of India. That this was the first selfie that India ever took, because before this book there was no self-portrait India ever made, because it was only a place where certain caste exists, and it was always divided in different castes in different kingdoms. But on 26th of January 1950, we took a resolution that we, the people of India, give ourselves this constitution that gives us the guarantee to be free, to be equal, to get liberty, and to live in fraternity. And that's how Baba Sahib picked a lot of us, out of our misery that was uh, built upon us, forced upon us, because of the tradition, because of certain cultures. And Baba Sahib, he just did not, he's not just an anchor point to, go to the past of Baba Sahib. He is also an anchor point to the things that happened post Baba Sahib and things that are happening today. So for me as an artist, Ambedkarism becomes an ideology where my interest lies in the, this bigger umbrella of equality, liberty, and fraternity. And that gives me an opportunity to, find solidarities between different communities. Last year during Black History Month, I did an interesting series where I tried to bring people from anti-caste history and from the civil rights movement in America together, and made these illustrations where they are either having a conversation, or they're in some sort of a place. So here, in this image, there is Malcolm X, there is Baba Sahib Ambedkar, they're giving speech, and in the background there is a mix of Indians and the African Americans, and how they are coming together, listening to each other, cross listening to each other, and how there is a solidarity of future of Ambedkarism. That's how I see it. And as I said, that there is nothing that we are the nation builders, and it is important that we are given credit, we are credited for being nation builders, but we are also documented as being nation builders. And that is also why I see my work important, because I try to document my people, I try to document the works that they are creating in the contemporary times, because nobody else will ever document them. Nobody has done it in the past, and nobody will do that in the future. And this idea also came to me from Baba Sahib and from one of his habits, which is very interesting, that he used to document the clippings, the newspaper clippings of his articles, of wherever he's mentioned in his book. Because, and I can understand that sort of vulnerability that there is, that nobody will be documenting the sort of ideas that I'm propagating. So sometimes it is important for us to document our own community, to document what is happening around us, and also to document our own work that we are producing throughout our journey as being. So I wanted to make, I did not want to see, people in black and white, broken and scattered. I wanted to see people who dress well, like Baba Sahib and Shahuji Maharaj here. And, just before they have started Akhil Bharatiya Bahishkrit Samaj Parishad. And, Baba Sahib is comfortably sitting in his suit, and, so is Shahuji Maharaj. So I started to, reimagine how their lives would be, even if, they might not have been, this is just an imagination. This is not remaking of history. There might not be truths about, where they are standing or what they are wearing, but these are the imaginations that, that holds me, that holds dear to me, and that helps me imagine them, while I'm dreaming, or I'm treasure hunting, or soul searching, while I'm working. And Baba Sahib is, he was always an anchor point to us when we were kids, because that's how our grandmother, our parents used to tell us stories. There was always this young Bhima who was able to do, things in the harshest conditions. So, what is your uh, uh, why are you not able to do it? So that was always, told to us. Bhima stories were always told to us in different ways. My grandmother even would modify some of these stories, some of the stories from Red Riding Hood, and other such stories, and bring this character, this interesting character Bhima, in these stories, as somebody who is, always on your side, who is, your best friend. Sometimes, he's a guide that you have found, while you were going to see your grandmother, and other stories like that. So there was a lot of interesting elements that were, connected to Bhima when I was young, even before knowing that, this Bhima is, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Uh, and, that's how I was also trained about feminism in my own community, in my own, family, and how my grandmother, who also used to work outside, also used to have almost equal say in how the earnings of the family should be. There was a sort of equality which we saw, between our grandparents, because of the scarcity of, or because of the vulnerability. The sort of feminism that I started to read about in books, especially when I was in bachelor's, was a little bit contrast to the sort of feminism that we talk about in the slums or in our mohallas. For us, the main motive of feminism was to create an equal society. But what we started to read was the freedom of, expression and other things, which was already there. So especially, sexualizing women bodies. I remember how my grandmother used to, sit outside without a blouse, with a simple drape, and she was never sexualized for it, because it used to be very hot. So, she would sit that way. So this thing about being comfortable with another gender, I learned this from living in these slums, in these mohallas, where we are such a small knit community that, there needs to be a respect that, that is very cumulative, that is very uh, equal in nature. And also because the whole community was also a part of the movement, the Bamsef movement, the Baspa movement, and the Ambedkarite movement. So they themselves were also trying to understand feminism in their own sort of manner. And and I think the greatest thing about this month and about celebrating Baba Sahib and Mahatma Phule is also that this is also a month where we do a lot of readings, where we do a lot of conferences and talks, such as here, where we talk about different people's life and other things. And this reminds us of how important Baba Sahib's literature is, and how how it is a guideline for us to grow in our own occupations, in our own trades, whatever we choose to do, and have this satisfaction, have this satisfaction with the self. I lived most of my childhood feeling inferior. There is nothing inferior about our community. It has an amazing future. I wish there were more storybooks about us. I wish there were more stories about us in the textbooks, because even though my grandparents were trying to tell me those stories, my parents were trying to tell me those stories, I thought that they were lies, because they were never said in the classrooms, and they were never a part of the school curriculum. So I felt orphaned from my history back then, but now I don't feel that way. I feel that the more I have started to dig up about my own history, the more uh, satisfied I become, with what I am, and where I come from. Not just class wise, but also not just caste wise, but also class wise. I have no shame in in accepting that I come from the family of working class people. I came from the family of postmen, of people who still make shoes, or mend rickshaws, make punctures, and I'm still able to speak good enough English. I'm still able to travel around the world. I'm able to publish my work in different places around the world. So I don't feel that there is anything that make me feel inferior about it. I take pride in wherever I come from, because this is the most resilient community that I have ever read about, and I have ever witnessed in my life. With the sort of punishment that was given to us for just being existing was horrendous. And I think I am very proud that I come from the family, or come from the society, or from the heritage, where my elders stood resilient against the harshest conditions that humans can ever create for the fellow humans. uh, as is My grandfather was, as I said, that my grandfather was a Ravidasya, from a Ravidasya sort of a sect. And he was a postman. So that's through Ravidas and through post office, he started to learn about Baba Sahib Ambedkar. So we have different ways of learning about Baba Sahib Ambedkar in our own families, in our own communities. So people get to learn about Baba Sahib, or people got to learn about Baba Sahib through different places. My father really got to learn about Baba Sahib through his office mates, even though, because he never went to college. And after 12th he joined State Bank of India as a messenger. So all he had was his colleagues. So that's where he learned about Baba Sahib and his movement, and he joined the bank union. But along with the union, he enrolled himself for a bachelor's degree, and he completed his degree along with working, here, from an what do you call it, long distance course. And that's how he became clerk in the same bank where he was a messenger. Then, as being a clerk, he enrolled himself for another degree of masters in commerce, and that's how he got his master's degree. And again, he became an officer in State Bank of India. So even though they did not had that traditional university, sort of exposure to education and to Baba Sahib Ambedkar, they found Baba Sahib Ambedkar and education, intermixing somewhere, in some era of their life that changed their life, in some way or the other. My father was very much inspired by Dalit Panthers, and he even joined Dalit Panther Party when he was in when he was working in State Bank of India. But uh, and the Dalit Panther Party in UP worked very differently from the Dalit Panther Party in Maharashtra, and it was very short-living. So, but the ideas were there, and I would see a lot of pamphlets. I would see a lot of these posters, these great graphic designs that were inspiring me without even knowing that graphic design, as a course exists, or, as an occupation exists. Uh, and I started to, document the community and the stories of our own community. Here is Manevar Kashiram, and since he has been very important part of prosperity in our life along with Baba Sahib Ambedkar, I've also tried a lot to document his life. When we were little kids, I remember that in our mohalla, people used to make me stand on the roof, and since all the roofs were almost joined, I would stand and they would give me a mic, and I would speak an essay that I have written in school about my mother, or my language, or anything like that. And people would just listen to this kid speaking in English. And and people would say that you have to send your kids to English speaking school so that your kid can also speak in English, even though nobody's understanding what I am saying. Even sometimes I would not understand what I was saying, because in small towns, there, even the Catholic schools are not as good as we imagine. So, but yeah, but that's how the community work happened. That's how the education was made into propaganda, that you have to send your kids to school, because then only there is prosperity, then only there is progress that can come your way. And that's how I started to see the changes in the society, in the community. I started to see viharas coming in UP, in my district where I come from, Bijnor. And I started to see these motives emerging from the community people, from the people who are Ambedkarite in nature, and they are developing this new sort of aesthetic that is yet to be documented, that is Buddhist, and and that is very modern Ambedkarite in nature. So it is a sort of minimalism and the ideas of the Eightfold Path of Buddha coming together in architecture. Even though, since our community does might not have that sort of money or capital to build such structures, but even though the small families who are building such structures in two-tier, three-tier cities are worth documenting, and they are really amazing ways of rethinking architecture, rethinking design, without even having a professional or formal education about design, who say that we do not have culture. We have culture in every house that we had scarcity, and in that scarcity we created our own culture. And even though this is all good in that sense, the sort of work that you produce, where you work, where your work gets to travel along with you, but it is also a very suffocating sort of a space, especially living in India, where your neighbor asks you your caste as the first thing when they enter their new apartment. So here caste becomes like an everyday struggle, or an everyday sort of experience, even if you are Buddhist or not. My family converted to Buddhism before I was born, but the way the egalitarian society is being built in Maharashtra around Buddhism is not the same way it is being built in Uttar Pradesh. But it is in a nascent space. It is in a space where we are sort of building it, and we are in that transformation space where it is a little bit suffocating, because we are not just I remember how hard it was for my grandmother to leave her culture when they uh, converted to Buddhism. And even though we would not celebrate the Hindu festivals, but my grandmother would want, some sort of feast on some festival. Even if somebody else is celebrating, we should also eat mutton or chicken or, pork or whatever, that is there. So, there was that suffocation that she went through, that, that their generation went through. Since we are now, I think I was since born a Buddhist, so there was no problem in me, transforming into that. But the problem lies outside my house, where people have not transformed yet. So, it is a sort of melting sort of an experience that, it feels really suffocating, living in that sort of neighborhood. But we always have Baba Sahib, we always have his ideas, we always have, his text, his dreams, his stories, and we can always feel kings, and queens in our minds through our work, through the work that we produce in whatever occupation, we are in. I think we need to be, if you are a barrister, be a barrister as good as Baba Sahib Ambedkar. If you want to be an economist, be an economist as good as Baba Sahib. So that's what is my major chunk from Baba Sahib Ambedkar, is to be passionate about your thing and to be the king, of your own life, to choose your own life, to be your own light, as Buddha said, and to decide your own life, how you want to live it, how you want to lead it, how you want to idealize it, how you want to philosophize it, and how do you want to experiment with it. Um, and I was able to do it. I was, able to document, and I am able to continue doing it, even though I was told that, you should not work in the anti-caste movement because there is no money in there. Or, but I was trained as a designer, and I saw it as a void. For me, it was very important that my stories, my community stories are told, and I want to make sure that they are a part of the mainstream media, they are a part of our libraries, and so that no children who is going to these design schools ever feel, orphaned from their own history. And it is all possible because there are so many other artists who are, co-creating with us. Artists like Shrujna, whose artwork this is, which is reimagination of Maveli Nadu. This is another work of Shrujna where she's reimagining Sadhana Press, one of the presses during the Dalit Panther movement. This is Gaddar, and this is another Shrujna's drawing of, celebrating the poet Gaddar from Andhra Pradesh. This is Rahi Punishokla's work, and it's just an expression of a woman, just sitting and chilling. And, sometimes it is important that, we come from a community which is always working, which is always working hard, which is always hustling and hustling and hustling. And it is important for us to, sometimes just sit back. And, we should also remember that how Baba Sahib, how Ramai, we lost these people, in a very young age, because they were always hustling, they were always hustling for us. And it is important for us that, we sometimes relax, and we sometimes, take a chill pill, rest for a bit, and, just be, and be thoughtful about our health, be thoughtful about our mental health, about our well-being as well, because nobody else will. This is another work of Rahi, where, he is, this is a cover of the Caravan magazine, where, he is uh, experimenting with the expression of Baba Sahib and, human hand. This is work of Priyanka Paul, who has been, in solidarity with the Ambedkarite cause for a very long time, and she has worked uh, uh, to build a lot of documentation of the anti-caste movement. Like here, this poster she built for the Seattle State, caste discrimination recognition with when the drive was happening. Now this is the work of Big Fat Bao, who reimagines, especially the food and the women of the community with a different sort of perspective. This is the work of Prabhakar Kamble, where he has, used the things that used to disgrace us, such as broom, the pot that we were supposed to, tie in our waist and in our neck, and the feet, the gloves, which is the modern, symbol of hygiene and of discrimination in India. And this is one of the installations that he has done from for Berlin Biennale. That is here. This is the work of Mayuri Chari. Mayuri Chari, she comes from Goa and she works on bodies and women bodies and textiles, and she has participated various biennales around the world. And it's amazing how Mayuri sees women body and textiles and things bringing together. This is work of Vagmare and Smita Urmila, where they are documenting the sahirs of Maharashtra, where they are documenting the songs, they are documenting the poetry, they are recording the sahirs singing, so that because these are very vulnerable artists from the community who sing Bhim Geets, who sing songs of equality, liberty, and fraternity, who sings meta for all, songs about meta for all, but they are not documented. So they are being documented by people like by projects such as Seeking Begumpura. Here is another portion of it from how they have how they're documenting it. And it is also a very interesting exhibition. It is an exhibition that comes with a small box like a peti. It's So they bring the whole exhibition in that peti, and when you open that peti, these different prints come, these different poetry comes out. There are these recordings, and this whole peti, when it opens up, it becomes an exhibition. It is made into an exhibition, which is also a very innovative way of exhibiting. I think this is also a very interesting thing to mention, that artists from the community at these point of times are not just innovating in what to create, but also how it will be presented. As the whole contemporary art world is experimenting with art, India seems to have lagged behind on that. But that is only the mainstream Indian art world. If you see only Delhi Photo Festival or Indian Art Fair, it is like that. But Dalit artists are, or artists from the community, are doing amazing work. Such amazing that I think last month one of the artists from the community got her artwork painted on an Air India Express airliner. So so it is, that the expression of art is just something that we are experimenting on, not just how to make it, but how to present it. This is Sri Vamsi Matta's performance art, where he invites people to eat with him. He cooks with people. It's also like a potluck where people get food from their houses, and while he's cooking, he tells stories about food. He tells stories about his grandparents, and different stigmas around what to eat, what not to eat, and how they make things. So this performance is a bit of story that you learn, a bit of recipes that you learn about, which you can try and make at home, and a bit about, meeting these new people who are crazy about food and the idea of taste and, cooking and feeding people. Uh, this is work of Vikrant Bhise. He's one of my favorite artists, absolutely amazing artist who works, one of the most important contemporary artists of our times. He produces big murals of Baba Saheb in contemporary times, rethinking Baba Saheb in contemporary times, and um, uh, also thinking about the labor and the worker, the conditions of the workers around the country. Um, this is also work of Vikrant Bhise, where he has tried to document 6th December in Diksha Bhumi. He has tried to document Rajgruha, and he has so from huge murals to small murals, he creates a lot of a plethora of work, and his work is everywhere in international biennales, in all the art fairs. So he's one of the most promising artists of our times. This is work of Grace Bano, who is a transgender activist. And even though Grace Bano is known to be a transgender activist, but she also works with different theater groups and talk about the horizontal reservation, talk about the intersectionality between transgenders and the anti-caste movement, talk about the people from the Dalit community who are transgender and how affirmative actions, they require affirmative actions, for their own community. So this is another way of expressing how artists are expressing themselves. This is Rohit Vemula's suicide letter that we painted in Ahmedabad in one of a new museums called Conflictorium. So Conflictorium is a museum of conflict. It's a very new idea in India, but it is a very tested idea in especially in Europe, especially in Germany and in Western Europe, where they have made these conflictoriums about various conflicts around the world. Right from the concentration camps to World War, First World War, and Cold War times. So even falling of Berlin Wall. So inspired from there, we started the first conflictorium in Ahmedabad, and now the second conflictorium is in Raipur. So there is a letter of Rohit Vemula that is always there, because that is one of the most conflicting things that we learned about, and it is very special to me, or it is very important to me, because when Rohit Vemula was killed by the institutional murder, I was also in college, and I had no friends, no teachers to discuss, this demise. I had nobody to talk to, when I was in college. So, we decided that we will at least paint this, and there would be at least one place that, and since I was studying in Ahmedabad, it is in Ahmedabad, so that, people can come, even if they don't have other people to talk to. So this is, one of the ways, my works are put. This is from IT Delhi, and it is, so my work is being put in different institutions. It is in galleries, in different spaces, in different book fairs. But I always, go for something like this, where I try to do these exhibitions in two-tier and three-tier cities, where I print artworks, not just mine, but also of my friends, and then, put them, inside a tent in for people to come, because I also want to flip this concept of patronage, that why should only rich people be patrons? Why are people not patrons? So these galleries are generally paid galleries, where you pay 1 rupee, 2 rupee, 5 rupee as an entry fee. And we started noticing that when it used to be free, people would just come and go. uh, but then when we started asking for 2 rupees, 5 rupees, people started to have this ownership, and started to question things, that what is this about, what does this image say. We do these guided tours, where we pick students from the colleges of the same city or town, and we train them, we tell them about what these artworks are about, so that they can also give walkthrough to the people who have just came outside to buy some fish, or some vegetables or atta or something like that. So this is one of the images from from Surat. This is how different people from different age groups comes and sees these exhibitions, because I see that whenever I put up an exhibition in an exhibition center, these spaces are very intimidating, and I do not really enjoy that process, where people are just sipping wines and looking at an artwork for some time, and the masses are not able to see it. It is important that my work comes from the community, that it reaches the community. So it is my responsibility that whatever I am creating, whatever I am producing, because of the community, needs to go back to the community, not just through Instagram, but also through these physical exhibitions, where they come and get to see artworks, and engage with them, like we engage with them in the different galleries. uh Thank you very much for having me here, and I think that's all I have to say. And I hope you all have a great day ahead. Jai Bhim, and Namo Buddhaya.
Thank you, Siddesh. Really appreciate that. It was very creative and very informative, and some of the things I like it was kind of new for me today. Really appreciate that. I would like to invite members if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions. Thanks.
Okay, Siddesh Gautam, Namo Bodhaya Jai Bhim.
Jai Bhim, Namo
I'll take 1 minute and I want to appreciate. There's no question to appreciate. To me, your ecological niche. You see, ecological niche in the art, culture, and uh, communication. You see, seems to be the right thing to happen for JBM community. This is my first observation. The second observation is see any art or a creative output has got format and content. This is quite classical. And with regard to content, you are very very competent and capable, and you have shown it. Regarding the format, I have got some observations to make. See, my observation is like this. Let me take 30 seconds to tell you. See, way back in 1987, there was Bharat Jan Vignan Jata. Bharat Jan Vignan Jata, wherein 29, 29 people's science organizations came together. One Gavarikar was formerly a scientist engineer from ISRO. In fact, I'm also a former scientist engineer ISRO. 9 years back, I retired. He was instrumental in getting about 8 to 9 crores of rupees earmarked for these 29 people science organizations to arrange a jata. 5 jatas converged at Bhopal. See, what was beautiful was I want to conclude by telling a similar thing done by you and a small team of like-minded people can make a well of a difference. That is, they used to have months together workshops to develop the software and hardware, the form of PPTs, videos, posters, and so many things. The children also played a very important role, and this went on for more than a month, Gautam, more than 1 month. 20,000 kilometers. It traversed in the country. And probably a good number of Gautam, Siddesh Gautam can make such a, scale of operation. This is the right thing to happen because here nowadays we have find so much of people science in a hatch patch. It's like, Astana artists, those people who are, patronizing from the government, they become more of an infodemic. Infodemic is misinformation, disinformation. Incidentally, 2021, I became an infodemic manager in the WHO. See, a lot of misinformation, disinformation is going on. You can really, level it and also take our community into the center stage. That's one positive thing. I want to conclude by saying that, having said that, an international validation will go a long way. There is something called Athena in Athens, Greece. 120 countries are converging there, you know, from arts to technology. And it's one wonderful hub. I'm a member there. And finally, I want to thank Anna. I was introduced to Anna in 2018. 2019, I went to USA. Before that, Venerable Anand Banteji from Mahabodhi Society, he introduced me. I feel very, and I liked the model because the very structure of Anna Buddha Vihara is wonderful. We did similar thing for 250 weeks, 2000 to 2020. My sincere thanks and this should go on. You see, this should go on, and there is a lot of things that are coming up, and you are simply an icon for us now. A new generation trying to bridge the old, integrate. When you were telling about your grandmother, I was remembering my grandmother. You see, my grandmother, 1960s, a lady who was uneducated, she used to beat us with broomstick if you don't wash our hands and get into the home. And now we have kept the father and grandfather and grandmother's photo outside and kept a bucket and a tumbler and a liquid soap. So I wash myself whenever I come inside home. See, these sort of life practices are only possible in JBM community, not elsewhere. So many thanks, Siddesh. Uh, so do well. I would like to get your email through the chat box. I'll be thankful to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Siddesh. Thank you, Siddesh, for joining the online Vihara and accepting our invitation. I think we are not knowing you since long time, but the Silas Pallivar from the AIM Bahrain, he shared your contact and we're fortunate to meet you on this call. And we saw your art in the many places and in the many forms, in the many magazines, and we are too late to connect with you. My question right now, we are in the era of the AI right now, and AI is also creating very similar images to what you are also creating. So, what is you are going to distinguish the AI images with your art of work in terms of the Ambedkar format? Nowadays many people are start creating the flyers, other things in the AI format. And sometimes it diverting the image of Dr. Ambedkar, Buddha, or Phule, uh, down the road after 20 years, the 25, 30 years, when we are not here, you will not see the actual image of the person, right? Because the AI is creating their own way of art and creating something else. So what you are seeing that thing right now in the AI generation form of art?
So the AI, so there are both sides of this coin. AI is also very important, especially for people from our community, especially when it comes to writing, when it comes to pitching your projects to different grants and international organizations and other places, even in national organizations. So, especially textually, it is a great assistant. I have also tried to learn AI. I tried to, use AI to assist, to as an assistant to my work, not to create images as such. I think it is good that more images are being created because earlier people used to have ideas but they were not able to create it. But I think it is also very raw era of AI that we are in, and it will take some time that there will be more streamlined sort of way. And you are right that we are losing the real faces, or and also the real values, because things have started to look very similar to each other. So whatever that AI is producing is producing, it very it produces very similar images, and also the wrongs that it does looks very right. So, the interesting thing about it, art created by humans is that it is always imperfect. And the imperfection, it shows, and you are able to see that. And that's what cut fire inside your head, that oh, that's what makes you stand for some time. And that sort of impurities, or those sort of things can only be brought by humans. So I think even though a lot of jobs are already gone, to be honest, there are a lot of thumbnails that and there are a lot of these images that a lot of media houses has also started to do. But they will also come to a time where they would require these people who understand what images are required to be produced, and in what ways they have to be produced. And the value of people who creates with hand will become even more, because there will be less people to do that. I think we are also, moving towards a point where, children will even forget how to write, because there is so much that is being typed. So that would also be lost, and there would be people who would be just paid because they can write. So yeah, we are moving in that direction, but it is very important for us to always be a part of technology that is there. That's what Baba Sahib also did when he was, going for his publications. That's how I see, Janta, Bahishkrit Bharat, and Muknayak, that, he used, the technology of that time, that is printing press, and, used it to propagate his ideas. So it is very important for us, till the time it is as democratic as it is now, to use AI in your format, to train AI in your own format, because the AI is also being trained. So if you will also use it in that way, you will also train, AI in that direction. So it is important, whether it is beneficial or not, I am not very sure about it, but it is important that we should, also learn about this technology, because it is very important for the marginalized communities from all over the world to be as near as technology as possible, because that is the only thing that can elevate us and, bring us towards progress.
Thank you, Siddhesh. Yeah. We can move to the next question. Members, if you have any questions, please go ahead and raise your hand, or you can also type your question on the chat box if needed. Yeah.
Yeah. Jai Bhim, Siddesh bhai. I have always known you as Bakery Prasad, and Praneeth has to jump on another call, so he has left the call, but I'll take it from here. Uh, I'm really glad that finally we got connected. I have always loved your work, and I have two questions for you. So one is like, do you have any plans? Like, I do see your website, and most of your artwork is there. But do you have anything catered towards kids? Like, we celebrate all the programs, right? But then we give them some coloring pages and other things. So I believe that if you create these arts, if you create a version dedicated for kids, I think it will not only just propagate your work, but it will also give multiple stories to the kids that they can share, and that will have a huge impact. Basically, like during all our programs we need, and we go with like the Baba Saheb portrait or Buddha's portrait or other things. So I think that is one thing if you already have. If not, maybe you should add one page where people can go to your website and download these. uh, the second thing is like, do you also conduct any workshops, maybe in person uh, or online ones, so that more and more people can get connected? Yeah, those two things. Thank you.
Thanks. I have recently finished my first children graphic novel. So where I am bringing this story that I was telling about Bhima, that my grandmother used to tell me about, how Bhima comes to your mind. So I am trying to, it is very difficult. So I've just finished a graphic novel which is for adults, and a smaller, it's almost one-fourth novel, which is a children's novel. It is much more difficult to produce, because the language is difficult to learn, and you have to, you know be accepted in their society, so to write about them. So I'm learning. So I think the book will come out by the end of this year, the graphic novel that I'm doing for this. And I'm also doing a new graphic novel where I'm trying to do this children's book on anti-caste movement and civil right movement coming together. So these, stalwarts like Malcolm X meeting Baba Sahib, Savitri Mai meeting Angela Davis. So it's a sort of conversation, that sort of thing. So I'm trying to do that. But one interesting thing that you talked about is coloring book, or sort of finding these ways of engaging with art. I think I will definitely think about it, and come up with at least few images which are downloadable, where people can use them for this, because I have a lot of images where a lot of them are together as well. So we can just have something around that. About workshops, again, I do a lot of workshops with adults, because I love kids, but I am also very afraid of going into their society, because it is I do not want to impart anything wrong to them. And they're very sensitive people. I Because as a kid, I remember a lot of things. There are a lot of memories of me as a kid. And I used to think my grandparents are liars, because they are not, because the stories that they are telling me are not there in the books. My teachers are not telling me. So children are very smart. So so I'm trying to be as smart as them. So I'm very excited that you talked about it again. And I'm sure that, by the end of this year, I'll have a lot of things for kids and I'll be able to at least introduce myself to their society.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, love your work, and I'm really looking forward to all that. One follow-up question though, like on your website, you do have your artwork, but the way you explain those stories, the way you connected the dots, I don't see that
Yeah.
because uh, because I have a feeling that when we connect those dots verbally, like in such meetings, it is good for connecting with people. But in the age of AI, we don't have so much literature available, and AI has very biased
Yeah.
views these days. So if you can have that kind of story attached to each of your artwork, I think that will have much bigger impact in a long run, because
Yeah.
all that is public data, and with the web scraping, it will hopefully make significant impact with AI world, and it will become less biased. So that is one feedback I would like to give, and maybe I would like to see the same stories on your website and on your Instagram and everywhere.
Yeah. Thanks. It's a
Thank
great point, and I would love to do it, and I would consider doing it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We are still taking the questions. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand, and we will take those questions. We are almost towards the end of this call, so please raise your hand or ask your questions. Manish bhai, do you have any questions?
Yes, I just have a question. And again, Ajay Bhim Sidhu sir, thank you for coming on Anna Vihara and for showing your work. It's amazing. And my question is again on the same line of computer industry and all the way. Third back to back third question, like Mahesh Dada asked AI from this. So this way also asking about computer and all. And mine also similar one because kids I can see really get engaged when they're watching those videos and all because we may not able to notice this. Even my kid tell me that, oh, we are watching this video where an artist is drawing this picture and they get millions of views. Again, view is a different part, but what I'm going
Yeah.
to say, even people can see what you are doing it. So are you documenting those stuff when you're doing, or you are running on your YouTube channel or,
I feel very shy documenting myself, so that is
I will
what
say not to be.
I have tried people having me. So there have been these people have tried to document me drawing things,
Yeah,
and I feel very awkward. I feel like I'm not doing my best because you have to sit in a certain way because I like lie down, I have
right,
like
right, right.
very different ways of,
Yeah.
being comfortable and drawing things.
No,
So
there
for
are so
that, I have
many.
to sit really
No,
straight.
there are so many
But
artists who don't show their face too. Means if you
yeah, yeah,
start slowly like that, because see, my kids nowadays when they want to learn something, they open that video and they start drawing those lines, sketching those lines. So
yeah.
there are multiple benefit, I will say. Means one, of course, view. Means that
I'll
is
try to do that. I
yeah,
feel
second,
very shy.
yeah,
I'll try
because
to.
what I'm going to say, yeah, because sometimes when we also think like we should not stay behind like all these questions coming back to back regarding IT industry and AI, and now I'm asking about YouTube stuff and all. Why I'm saying because audience are changing, people are changing their the way they are learning, they are watching. So we don't want to miss any area where suppose you have an art side. So some people who are putting their things on YouTube video or art related stuff, it will be helpful. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm
yeah,
going to say. Like, and secondly, it's very cheap actually, right? You don't need any more equipment and all. Just sitting at home, putting camera and
yeah,
starting. So why to miss that opportunity? We know,
yeah,
like once upon a time, people need to take classroom and they're doing all those
yeah,
activities, spending so much, wait, so spending so much money, and now it's just putting
yeah.
camera on and start your work. So I will suggest or encourage like if you can do that also, kids who want to
Will
learn,
definitely
who
try. Yeah,
that way also one of the way to reach out and show your work.
yeah,
So that is just a suggestion because my kids watch that only.
yeah.
Because
That's
I'm learning from them, frankly speaking. Like
yeah,
which video they're following, what. Wait, no silly thing, please. Thank you. So yeah, that was only suggestion. No, I don't have question because I'm not the artist person, but that's a suggestion.
oh,
Thank you.
thanks a lot.
Siddesh, I thought of keeping quiet, but because of Manish, an important issue was raised. I wanted to respond. You see, what we should look from our perception as educators, especially the climate change and the counter space, that is the abuse of space that you see in the wars now. There is one way out, Sidesh, and Manish also can take note of this. UN University and United Nations systems are trying to answer these artificial intelligence issues and look at the ethical issues. I think Jay Beam will have a larger perspective in this dialogues going on right now. If you search the United Nations ethical issues and artificial intelligence, I think we will get greatly benefited and get linked to the global initiatives going on already. This the IT sector, especially crippled by the commercial interest, will not do this. Only ANA and your niches can make a difference. So finally, I want to put a word to all our ANA community members. One thing, please don't get scared of the artificial intelligence. It's like COVID. See, take synonymous to COVID or in the wars now going on. In simple understanding, mind to machine is artificial intelligence. But what is required is mind to mind. That is J-beam conscience. You see, I want to repeat. If you put mind to machine, it is artificial intelligence. If you put mind to mind, it is J-beam's conscience, capacity to distinguish right and wrong. And that's the way out. So thank you very much. I thought of sharing this. So kind of you. Take care. Take care. I'll be in touch with you. I got your mail now.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that observation as well. A last call for any final questions. Please raise your hand. And
One quick question said this. I mean, we do based in the North America, and we also have a good reach to the people. And your art is amazing. So we also have website, other social media website. Is it okay to link those things there, or is it confidential? Okay, okay, okay. So we'll try to link it so that so that it will reach out to the maximum number of people, and the people can also connect with you, because that's what our goal is to, right? So we'll see if we can link your artwork and other things to our website and other places. Yeah, social media platform. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. Yeah, so I don't see any hands raised. So we would like to conclude this. I really appreciate your time, Siddesh Bhai. It's been an honor having you here. I may reach out to you separately for some other ideas after this call. But Anna, on behalf of Anna, I would like to thank you and everyone who attended this program. So this way we will conclude the program here and we will end this meeting. But appreciate everyone's time and thank you everyone. Jai Bhim.
Thank you, Jai Bhim.